Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why you'd totally drive across town to save 10 bucks on a calculator, but wouldn't dream of doing it to save the same 10 bucks on a new TV? Or how about this? Why does the pain of losing $100 feel so much worse than the joy of finding $100 feels good? Well, we're going to get into all of that today. We're exploring prospect theory, and this is a big one. It's the Nobel Prize-winning idea that completely flipped our understanding of how we make decisions about risk and value.
So, to get started, I want you to make a choice. Really think about it. You've got two options. Option A is a pretty great 80% shot at winning $4,000. Option B, you can just take $3,000 guaranteed. Walk away with it. So what's it going to be? Go ahead, lock in your answer.
If you went for the sure 3,000, you're not alone. Not by a long shot. When the original researchers, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, asked people this question, a full 80% of them did the exact same thing. Now here's what's so fascinating. If you actually crunch the numbers, the risky option has a higher expected value. Statistically, it's worth $3,200. And yet, the vast majority of us prefer the smaller, certain amount. And this little puzzle, it had economists scratching their heads for decades.
Okay, to really get why that choice is such a big deal, we need to take a step back and meet the person that old-school economics thought we all were. Let's call them the rational human.
See, for a long time, the dominant theory was something called expected utility theory. It basically assumes that we're all these perfectly logical robots, sometimes called econs, who make choices based purely on our final level of wealth. We're supposed to calculate probabilities like a supercomputer and pretty much always avoid risk. According to this model, we should be consistent and logical with every single financial decision we make.
Yeah, but as we just saw, that is not at all what happens in the real world. There are all these little puzzles in human behavior where that neat, tidy, rational model just completely falls apart.
Let's circle back to that first problem. We're choosing between a probable gain and a sure gain. And you know what? Our preference for the certain 3,000 actually fits with one part of that old theory, the idea of risk aversion. It makes sense, right? We'd rather take a smaller, guaranteed win than risk getting nothing. So far, so good for the old model.
And this just drives the point home. When we are in what's called the domain of gains, when we're thinking about what we could win, we tend to play it safe. We get really cautious. We lock in our winnings. It seems like we are, by nature, risk-averse.
But hold on. What happens when we're not winning? What if the choice is between two bad options? Let's totally flip the script here and see just how quickly our behavior changes.
Okay, new scenario. You have to make a choice, and neither one is good. Choice A, an 80% chance you lose $4,000. Choice B, a guaranteed 100% certain loss of $3,000. Yikes. So which do you pick? The bigger loss that's only probable, or the smaller one that's a sure thing?
The results here are just wow. A whopping 92% of people choose the gamble. They would much rather risk a bigger loss for that slim chance of losing nothing at all. And just like that, the cautious, risk-averse person from the first problem is gone. When we're facing losses, we become gamblers. We become risk-seeking.
This incredible reversal is called the reflection effect. Our attitude toward risk is like a mirror image of itself. It just flips depending on whether we're looking at gains or losses. And this created a huge problem for economists. Why? Why on earth do we completely change our strategy just based on how the problem is framed?
And this is where prospect theory enters the picture and changes everything. It offers a revolutionary answer. It says, hey, we don't think about our final state of wealth. That's not what matters. What matters is the journey, the change from where we are right now. It's all about the gains and the losses.
The whole theory pivots on this one crucial idea, a reference point. You can just think of it as your own personal starting line, your status quo. Every single outcome you consider is mentally coded as either a gain, that's above that line, or a loss, that's below it. And this simple shift in perspective, it's the key that unlocks the entire puzzle of our behavior.
So prospect theory is basically built on two main pillars that explain all these seemingly crazy choices we make. First, there's the value function, which is all about our emotional gut reaction to winning and losing. And second, there's the weighting function, which explains how our brain systematically messes with probability.
Let's dig into that first one, the value function. This gets right to the heart of how we feel about money, and it explains something we have all felt. Why losing $100 stings way more than winning $100 feels good.
The researchers came up with this perfect, now famous phrase to describe it: losses loom larger than gains. This idea is called loss aversion, and it's a fundamental feature of our psychology. The pain of a loss is just a much, much more powerful motivator than the pleasure of an equal gain.
And this gives us this really cool S-shaped curve for how we experience value. So check this out. On the gains side, see how the curve flattens out? That means your first $100 win feels amazing, but the extra joy you get going from winning $1,100 to $1,200, it's pretty small. Now look at the losses side. It's also curved, which means the pain of losing your first 100 is awful, but the added pain for each loss after that gets a little less intense. But, and this is the most critical part, look at how much steeper the loss side is right at the beginning. That sharp drop, that's loss aversion in action. It's the visual proof that losses just plain hurt more.
All right, so let's move on to the second piece of this puzzle, the weighting function. If the value function is about how we feel, the weighting function is about how we think. And it shows us that our brains, well, they're not very good statisticians.
This is basically how our brain messes with math. We don't see probability as a straight line. Look at that first row. We dramatically overweight tiny little chances, like 1%. This is why lotteries work. We see that tiny chance, and our brain treats it like a real possibility. Then, in the middle, we tend to underweight medium to high probabilities. But the biggest distortion of all is at the very top. The mental leap from a 99% chance to a 100% certainty, it's huge. We treat guaranteed as something almost magical.
And this one idea beautifully explains two massive industries. We buy lottery tickets because our brains blow up that tiny 1 in a million shot at winning. And we buy insurance because we do the same thing with the tiny chance of a total disaster. We overweight it, and we're willing to pay to make that risk go away completely.
This whole phenomenon has a name. It's called the certainty effect, and it explains that very first problem we looked at. An 80% chance of winning $4,000 is great, sure, but a 100% chance of winning $3,000 just feels different. We have this deep craving for certainty, and we are often willing to pay a massive premium for it, or, in this case, accept a lower reward just to get it.
Okay, so why does all this matter? Why is a theory that came from these simple little choice problems so important? Because once you get the hang of it, you will start to see prospect theory playing out everywhere, in every part of your life.
So let's boil it all down to the three big takeaways. Number one, your reference point is everything. How you frame a decision as a potential gain or potential loss from where you are now changes the entire game. Number two, always remember the fear of a loss is way more powerful than the desire for an equal gain. And number three, our minds are just suckers for certainty. We will overpay for it, and at the same time, we get totally seduced by long shots, completely messing up the actual probabilities. What this theory really does is give us a kind of map to our own minds, showing us the predictable shortcuts and biases that guide us. So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you know how your mind systematically bends risk, what irrational decision, maybe one you've made or one you're facing right now, are you going to look at completely differently?